Welcome, everyone, to the Healing and Freedom Journey. Mark and Melissa DeJesus in the house. Welcome to this episode.
We're here.
We are here. And I think this is a hat episode.
It is a hat episode. Yeah.
Both wearing hats today.
Right.
It is very rare that I wear a hat.
Would you like to tell everybody why it is rare?
I'm glad you asked.
Why, Mark? Why have you had a hard time with hats over the years?
I have a hard time with clothing. I have a hard time with clothing that fits properly. Mm-hmm. And I have always had a problem with hats fitting my head. And I've never had a good go at it growing up. And I always wanted to wear hats. But I finally found a couple companies actually, that make hats for bigger heads. So I've had my whole life this trouble with having, I don't know if you call it big head disease or just large head or...
No, well, we have a theory, which is the genetics of your father's Spanish, Puerto Rican, like pure in that way, and your mother's Swedish, Norwegian purity coming together was like a collision.
A grand collision.
Yes.
Yeah, so...
Because you had like over the top severe growing pains growing up and things like that.
Yeah, when I was a kid, my mom was telling me some stories back growing up that the doctor was like his head is,
and your rib cage too. That's why you're close.
His head is abnormally large.
Oh, no.
You know, so this goes into like childhood being made fun of, being called Mr. Potato Head, stuff like that, all that kind of stuff. Anybody who went to high school with me, you remember those times you made fun of me. But so I had a hard time, even as I was a kid. I did, in our church, we had this thing called Royal Rangers. It's like a
Boy Scouts situation for the Christians.
Yeah, like a Christian Boy Scouts, right? And they'd have these berets you'd wear, and my dad would have to take the beret and like cut it and make like a special elastic and thing.
Babe, I didn't know that.
Yeah, for it to fit my head. Yeah. So
you poor thing.
Yeah. So I could go to like a store and be like, okay, give me the largest hat you have, and
it still didn't fit.
It still wouldn't fit.
Yeah.
You know, I'm somewhere within like an above 8, size 8, if you know anything about hats. And so I finally found this company. You sent me one, but then I found one actually in like an ad in my like news feed.
Google knew we were hat searching. They heard us discussing it probably at the kitchen table. And
right.
Don't get me started.
Right. This is where the spying on me came in useful. So I had this company and it fits. I actually had to go down a size because their biggest one was actually too big. I go,
you should give the company a shout out.
Maybe I'm shrinking.
I know.
You know? So, and then I found another company that caters to larger heads too. Found a hat for the yard.
Which I found, that's the one I found. And they were like out of stock for a while. And they finally sent me hey, it's back in stock, and you were so excited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then like a trucker baseball hat.
So this one is like, what is it called? A Boston Scully? Is that the company?
Yeah.
Or
in fact, Boston Scally.
Scally.
Scally, Scally. This is the Sailor collection.
I love it.
It's me Sailor collection. I'm going out to.
And you've never been able to wear like a normal baseball hat or trucker hat, and you got a trucker hat too, and I love it.
God works miracles. God works absolute miracles. Yeah. I actually thought for a long time that maybe my head being larger is why I often have neck and shoulder pain.
Well, it could be.
Carrying the weight of a bigger noggin. So that's one.
So we're excited. Mark is wearing hats now, and
I'm wearing hats.
He is just rocking the hats.
That's it. Love it. So maybe you'll see me
the hats and Hawaiian shirts. This is your year, babe.
Hats and Hawaiian shirts.
If those of you that watch the Sunday Night Lives, that's your trademark this year is the Hawaiian shirts.
It is. Although I am running out of.
You are going into repeat, same shirt. So we have to. If I was to look back on all of our videos over the years, it's like same shirt. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
The rotation.
That's a running joke
It is.
in my family too, where
Same shirt.
we would do slideshows. You guys remember slideshows where you'd stick a thing in a carousel and we show slideshow. My mom would be wearing the same shirt and
like every vacation, everything.
Yeah. And we all and then I look at my life and I'm like, yeah, there's those go-to shirts that I wear that I just like. They just feel nice. They just feel, good in. So we've been on a series about our struggles. So maybe that's one of my struggles.
That is it. Listen, that has been a struggle for you.
Yeah.
And you're overcoming. This is great.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, what are some of the areas where you growing up, physical areas because we all have those,
I know.
Our belly's too big, or too short, too tall,
People
too
are
this.
mean. Kids are mean.
Right. Totally.
So awful. Anyway.
Yeah. So as I was, I was thinking about that. One of the things I was thinking, like I had this thought about, wow, I'm going to wear a hat today. I need a haircut. So I was like, why don't I just wear a hat? And I was thinking about what I said about my neck and shoulders. And it's an interesting thing because there's, when I found myself praying for people, sometimes they go, I have neck and shoulder pain and things like that. And you're praying for them. Sometimes I'd ask the question like, what kind of emotional weights are you carrying? Because it's like, stuff you care, you get weighed down with in your life and in your journey, right? And if I find so many people, like it would affect their back, it would affect their physiology. So I had this whole thought pattern that maybe we could talk about. We'll kind of see where it goes, where we carry stress, where we carry weight, where we carry emotions. And one of the areas I think about in our journey, I'll speak for myself, and you tell me where you're at in the midst of it, is we're emphasizing living emotionally healthy and whole and experiencing more healing and freedom in our lives, whole relationships, mental, emotional health, right? We're in a position where we're helping others. And there are a lot of times where you can get weighed down with burdens, emotional burdens that, you feel, and you feel the stress and weight of it, of like all the stuff that people are going through. We have an inside track with the emails and comments and stuff that's sent our way of like the battles people are facing, and they're many of them pretty intense.
Right. And
many people have gone through very significant, traumatic, hurtful, neglectful, difficult upbringings. You add to that lack of equipping and emotions and things like that. Then you add onto it, there's this aspect of weightiness as believers. When we look out at the world, there's weightiness you can feel. And even people I'm coaching, how are things going? One person said, well, the world is terrible right now. that was kind of the ramp into the discussion of like, things are changing so fast. There seems to be animosity to the things of God. There's just rumors of wars, and there's
a lot of calling evil good.
Yep.
We're seeing,
truth being exchanged for a lie. And believers are trying to navigate through all this. So you've got your own journey you're working through. Then you get the burdens of like your family and relatives and friends that you carry on. And you read the news or get on social media, and it's just like heaviness. And I feel like for me, it's taken a very intentional strategy of how to manage emotional weight. Like how they talk about managing your weight, like your actual physical weight, but it's like the emotional weight that is there. Because there's times where I don't think we say, how do you, have you done that well? There's lots of times, no, I don't. And it's not like there's a perfect science to it, because there are times where I will meet with someone and afterwards it's like, whoa, like I'm saying like a lot. I feel like where you feel so much what they're feeling. And a lot of psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists, coaches, there's this concept of like not taking it on, right? And I get that. And that's been a journey of learning. You have to be able to like have empathy and empathize with people, but also to like not taking it on in a way that is becomes something you're now carrying.
That it becomes your burden. Yeah.
So I feel like navigating this process is important for believers. What should we really carry in our hearts? Because you have your own burdens that you're going through, the own things that you're processing through in healing, right? And then there's starving children. There's in my last broadcast, I did you were there, you were watching it, but giving feedback to that audio message where there was a lot of like venting and where she was expressing just like, and what about the widows and what about the right? So then we don't know what's ours to carry. And I feel that in my journey, tell me what you think, because I know I've said a lot here. In my journey, navigating what's the thing I'm to carry and what's the thing that I need to let go. That's not mine. That's not mine. I feel like that's part of the confusion out of the brokenness we all come from of not knowing what we're supposed to carry and what we're supposed to not carry.
Right. Because I think in the, excuse me, sorry. In the church, we use other people's problems and use serving and giving and doing to avoid our own problems. We found this.
That's really good. Yeah.
We found this as a really bad problem. Even when we were pastoring, there were several people who, if you went to their house or got into their life, it was border hoarding, kind of like their house was out of order. Everything was out of order. Okay. But they were nonstop for other people. Absolutely nonstop. And it's a concern, and people can, they're doing for others. No, you're sacrificing yourself. So I think that's one aspect to look at of, am I completely ignoring stuff in my own life as I'm looking at everybody else's problems?
Right. That's very true.
So we were even challenged when we came here, because we knew moving here was obviously a new step for us, but it was a whole new level of how we were healing ourselves and letting go of a lot of things. And you really felt like that the Lord was saying, just take in what's around you. Literally what's around you. Like the neighbors to either side and what's in your current house.
Oh, thanks for reminding me of that. That was coming out of when 2020 hit and everything's getting shut down, everything. Right. My cry to everyone was, number one, don't be afraid. Be careful what you're getting tossed by and what you're being pulled by, but simplify everything.
Right.
Let's get back to the foundation of what it means to, relate to God and just love our neighbor. And I took it down to a literal sense of, okay, who's here? Like, let's get back to those in proximity to us, because it was, as challenging as that has been on the world and countries and families and people, there is a place where we can get back to the fundamentals.
Right, because we're missing those.
I don't think we really, culturally, I don't think we did that. I think we just, we just kind of survived, and it became a very traumatic season for so many. Mm-hmm. But you're right. There is a strong power relationally in just getting back to simplifying what is important in our relationship world. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, because sometimes we have these burdens on us and we think, well, I need to rescue my cousin. I need to, we get very wrapped up in what we think everyone else needs. Right?
Yeah. That part of our brokenness makes us feel that we have to have this guilt. We have this guilt-ridden role with family. And I think this would really benefit, because it's something you and I have had to work through in many layers, in many areas.
Yeah.
And when you're not equipped in unconditional love, you become pulled by guilt, and you think guilt is love. Mm-hmm. And when you look around at the Christian life, Many of us are serving, doing out of a compulsive guilt and obligation. If I don't, I feel bad. Like, just stop what you're doing for everyone for just a second and see how awkward that feels. And I've had to confront that in my own life because I was programmed so much to just do. And it's how when I felt disconnected from God, I would go serve to give that like.
And it's self-serving because you're making, I need to feel better. So if I do this, because if you ask a lot of people too, well, why are you going to that party? Well, I feel bad if I don't. Well, why are you giving a gift you can't afford? Well, I feel bad if I don't.
Right. So where do you find yourself in the midst of this? When it comes to emotional things that you carry and don't carry, where do you find it to be a struggle?
Gosh. You're saying the world or my inner... Which one do you think? Because I could do both. So, okay, I could get up.
Well, that's part of it.
Okay.
How you interact with your world and what you take on and the journey of where it can be weighty and heavy and, take a toll.
So I'll let people in a little bit to my kind of deeper thinking of where I can go. So I will open Twitter and see what's going on. Because I do feel like sometimes you can, we obviously don't get a lot of the like real news. So some people that you follow, you can go, okay, wow, that's going on. I had no idea. And I like to follow all different kinds of people, not just my 100%, Christian conservative view. I don't do that. I like to follow different people so I kind of know what people think and feel and all that stuff. Well, after a couple swipes of going through things, I'm like, I can go pretty hard on certain days of the fear of what's going to happen in the world. So then I find that I'm up with my coffee and I'm searching like food supplies that I have to stock up, which I think a good conversation too to have is it's like how to feel prepared but not do it so obsessively out of fear.
Yeah.
I struggle with that right now. So then I look at my kids and I'm like, what do they need? What do you need? What do we need? I go very heavy and hard into when I'm looking at the world around and then I look at what we have. Are we prepared for this? Do we have this? Do we like I went so deep the other day, you'll find this funny, but I went so deep the other day. I was like looking up water packs that they use for like survivalists that you can hook up and draw solar. Like I went into a whole thing.
Right.
Where I was like, oh my gosh, if you don't have access to clean water, I went really hard with some of the stuff in my mind.
It can happen. It's especially when you're a parent, and you're thinking about the next generation. We may do an episode just on the parenting factor in our life and what aspects are struggles and what we're learning in that. Well, one of the things that we've been talking about a lot is we don't want to parent out of fear. And it's so easy to get pulled into like looking at it out of fear and then acting out of fear and then responding out of that. And it's like, we need supplies and we need this and we need a stockpile. And
when you have kids, it's like a whole other ball game. Like, yes, it's just you and your, I don't want to say selfish, but you are when you don't have kids, when you can think outside yourself. Yeah. You're kind of like have a naivety of how you can manage. When kids come into the picture, it's like, I need an overabundance of things. And I think there's a part of me that I get that too from my mom because she grew up so poor that she was in a way like that of like making sure we had 3 shampoos at all times. Like she was afraid to ever go back to that poverty.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a part of me too that I've like being prepared. Like what if the worst case scenario hits? Now it's like there is a balance of that. Like, do you have an extra, whatever? But it can, when you have your kids, I do find that I'm like, okay, what would Max need if we?
Yeah, it hooks in.
Like I have about 5 extra boxes of granola bars right now because I'm like, Oh my gosh. We need granola bars.
There's an aspect of when as you're describing that, because I have the same things with my parents too. Whenever I talk to them, it goes down like a lot of those lanes,
Right.
It seems like the generational trauma comes through, that there's a concept of generational trauma where certain traumas people go through,
right,
like those get embedded in the generations. And it's a very interesting, phenomenon where it causes there to be certain thought patterns that
I think they're doing
that travels down.
They've done studies on this too. I think
they did it with people that had descendants that were in World War II.
Didn't they do the Hatfield and the McCoys too? I think, or was that more physiological?
That was like a disease profile where they had weird diseases, strange manifesting, but in Jewish people that were during the period of the Holocaust and World War II, and there was like severe poverty going on, and their descendants who didn't go through it manifested many of the similar thinking patterns. Mm-hmm. So this is how generational thinking patterns get passed down from generation to generation. And it's something that takes time to rewire because it's been a familiar way of thinking for so long. And I do see that where our parents, our parents went through what we call the Great Depression. Mm-hmm. And some were, born a little bit later. Our parents were more boomers, right? They call them boomers. We're Generation X. Yeah. And there is a sense of provision for the most part our generation has had. Now, growing up in the 70s and 80s, I remember my parents being really tight, where it was like, didn't have much, but we still did things, lived. And we can in some ways have the blessing where we didn't have like a severe depression hitting.
Right, we didn't.
But it is interesting how that mindset of fear of loss rises up to the surface in these times. And you and I have gone through significant financial hardship.
Right. We've had times where people have had to bring us food.
Yeah.
Right. We know what that's like. And I think there's part where you forget that. You forget that you've
been there and
lived through those things, right?
It's a form of exposure therapy.
Right.
You can follow me what I'm saying. I think you already get it. Where we look at the stock market, we look at finances when we're afraid. And Jesus is saying throughout all of this, whatever's going on, rumors of wars, you're going to hear battles and the love of many growing cold, earthquakes, famines. The instruction is just stay the course. Don't give in to fear. That's pretty much the instruction that's given. And we're so prone to falling into that. And we have to be kind to ourselves in that because we all have layers of it that we're working through. I wrote a book on fear. I teach materials on anxiety. There's still many layers I'm working through of landing in the trust and faithfulness of God. But there's these thoughts in our generation. So you and I go through, and the thing that was very clear to me when we hit like a rock bottom kind of spot was, oh, okay, I'm still alive. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, here I am. And the thought that occurred to me is I spent so much time being afraid of this.
Right.
I spent so much energy, so much time being afraid of this.
Right.
It's a boogeyman. And once you turn the lights on, you go, oh, the boogeyman's not even there. It was a shadow that was just creating an imagination in my life and in my journey. And you're right, though. It's in our conversations. People are talking about the economy's bad. This is bad, right? It's fine. It's fine to talk about that, look through it. But there's also a conditioning it could bring about. Mm-hmm. Oh, you better be.
Oh, I get sucked right into that. I do.
So what do you do to navigate that? What do you find anchors you to not let that take you out?
Well, sometimes what I do is I let myself go to it. Like, okay, like, what am I looking at? What is it that I'm really, really afraid of here?
A little bit of like what I'm saying,
yeah, I let myself, yes. And for me, sometimes it's even like, okay, I go to certain websites, like take for instance, the water stuff, right? And I'm like putting stuff in a cart and I'm like, I let myself kind of go through those things. I don't get them. And then what I do is I sit and I say, okay, I'm going to look at it tomorrow. If I still feel this tomorrow, and most of the time I just forget about it.
In a way,
it's kind of like a sleeping on it. I have learned to do that because I have I can get obsessive about things. And I've learned like, okay, I'm going to engage it, see what, like, go through all the motions of it I'm putting them in the cart. I'm not going to click buy and I'm going to go, okay, I'll come back to it.
Right.
And I forget about it.
You follow the trail of what the fear is saying without fully acting on it. You follow the trail. And then it reveals the smoke and mirrors.
Correct.
And it was like I was on a...
Yeah, I just got off Twitter and I got riled up about something and I saw some guy say, it's going to get worse.
Right.
Meanwhile, they've been saying this for a really long time. Now, I'm not saying things won't, okay? Because I think that's the battle, right? Is there truth in, like, be prepared for things in life? Just don't be like, whatever, we're just living on love, baby, and gonna live in a van down by the river. That's okay. But there is a place where it steals your peace.
Yeah. So this is where you and I are wired a bit different because my thought would lean to just get off Twitter.
You would, right. Yeah, well, this is where Mark and I do handle things differently of how we process.
But you have a wiring in you. Like, for example, you have a wiring where you lean into a lot of the political discussions and stuff like that.
I do.
Whereas I go, it's so toxic. Like I just go.
You're like, how can you even look at that?
I see it, and I go, unplug.
Yeah.
I'm working on hearts here, so there's no heart work here. It's just a lot of screaming and yelling. There is an aspect to you though where you engage it, you look at it, you're passionate about certain things, and that's your wiring, and we're very different in that.
Right. Like even I'll bring this up too in years past of where like when we were going through a lot of things and I was getting very bitter about a lot of things and you were like, we got to deal with this right now. And I would like vent to you. And for me, like it was a process of me working through it and internally coming to terms with like forgiving somebody, but it just would take me a little time. And you're the opposite. You're like, we got to deal with this bitterness. You need to forgive this person. And you're like, sometimes if you just take your hands off of it with me,
I could be compulsive about obsession over there being any trace of bitterness.
Right.
And I've even written a book called Bitter Free.
Right.
That I actually am longing to write a second edition because I feel that many believers get so obsessed about, I got to make sure there's no bitterness, they actually don't work through anger.
Right.
And my intention, because I worked for so many years hitting people, strong in that area because people were flat out like not forgiving at all. That's
true.
Like,
we did, right. There was like, a lot of that.
On deathbeds, like, no. I'm like, what are we doing? Right. I just saw so much like high level refusal to, work out anything. And then there's people like me that any sense of disturbance, I got to make sure there's no bitterness. Okay, let me walk through, right? There's good out of that because even my hypersensitivity to it helped people that were on the other end shake them out of that and work through some stuff. But I also had to heal through that and not be compulsive about, is Missy in bitterness? Are you in bitterness? Because if not, then God's not going to bless us. It didn't give room. So the better way is that's why love is always the more excellent way of just meeting you in what you're struggling with, not being afraid, because that kind of response is a fear response. We better pray. Versus there are times where I go, you know what, we need to We need to pray through this.
Yes. And I was just going to say that I think we've learned over the years, because there was a part for me that I can say to you, no, I don't need prayer right now. I'm working through this. But I have to like earn your trust in that too. I can't just stay in bitterness for months and not deal with it.
Right.
There was a part where I earned your trust, and you know what? I'm trusting her heart. She's taking care of this. And if she and I need to deal with this together, and we've learned that with each other, where you're like, you know what? I don't know. I think we need to pray through this. And I'm like, yeah. We've had to learn that over the years.
Yeah. Really good. Really good. Thanks for bringing that up.
Sure.
So I think that I had a flood of bunch of different thoughts hit me at the same time. I think that if I could go back to the simplification a little bit, where while you and I are wired differently, we first seek to operate in love, celebrate each other's, strengths, but also keep things simple, because life gets complicated fast. And I feel that, let me talk about my work with people, because that's been a struggle over the years where I would feel the weightiness and heaviness. And then what would happen is I'd be just inundated session after session after session, email after email after email, right? And then we were in seasons where we were struggling to get like the support we needed. We felt very alone in this. And there is a loneliness to it, because we're in this place where we're navigating biblical growth, healing. We're trying to bring an awakening to the need for healing of hearts in the church, and seeing that in the Gospels, and what and we've been ignoring that aspect. And then there's these things called mental health or emotional health, or I don't know, self-help or whatever it is, where we're diving in the midst of this and talking very authentically with insights about mental health battles, right? So you see this and you're just weighed down. I'm weighed down by it. I'm like, I'm in here all day, and then, man, everyone else is living like just in a totally different atmosphere. I've had to learn over time how to recognize that when you're meeting with someone, and every person who helps other people has to deal with this issue. There's a term, what do they call it? Where it's like a counter-transference, I think is the word.
It's a big word.
Where you're helping somebody.
I'm getting just yucked by somebody. That's.
let me put it in I have mark terms. You're helping somebody that's poking at an area of vulnerability in your own life.
Yeah.
This is beautiful, because for me, it's what has allowed me the grace to help many people, because I'm in it. So that's why when people navigate OCD, I'm not just like yelling at them or telling them to hurry and get over it, or just hurry up and get fixed. It's a journey, because I know the hell that it feels like, and it's like that with other areas like anxiety, depression, and so forth. But then there's other areas too, like toxic spiritual abuse that hits and target at areas where I'm still healing from certain toxic ministry, church
interactions, right?
Church wounds and interactions. And I've had to recognize that. Why do I feel so heavy after that session? Well, because what they're going through mirrors what I've gone through and I'm still healing from.
A lot of people don't recognize that at all.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah.
Because on one hand, it's what makes you awesome in helping people. People who've been through a divorce, like ladies who've been through a divorce and their husband abused them. What do they have radar for? They have radar. They you can almost detect. You can go, that lady's being abused by her husband. You can almost pick it up.
Yes, you can.
Right? Or you just go, I think that person's dealing with some depression. I could really? I don't know, John. I don't know, man. I'm around them. Something's going, something good. Right? I don't want to fuel suspicion and all that, because then we can get suspicious and then we're throwing flares everywhere. But I have to learn on a daily basis, and it come about through practice of like actually practicing. I can empathize, but this isn't mine to carry on my shoulders. This goes back to my shoulder pain, right? And like learning to, because my shoulders have gotten looser and looser over these past months. Stretching has helped too.
It has, yeah.
But learning to navigate, because everything in my life, when you felt it, you got to do something about it. Man, that's a recipe for eroding mental health. It really is, to think that because I feel it, I got to carry it. And we live in a culture where you're hit with and bombarded with so many things. And we need wisdom. I need wisdom. You need wisdom of knowing really what to carry and what not to. So does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I would say, too, what do you say to the person who is just having conversation and interacting, and they get like violently angry over somebody else's issues?
Yeah, I think, well, everything needs to be looked at through loving compassion.
Yeah, if you can't do that, that's what go ahead.
Because I've walked away from plenty of conversations, whether it's a official meeting or just sit down with somebody or whatever, walking away really stirred up, fired up. You're talking about anger. If it's anger, I don't think that needs to be a negative concern, because the anger could be off of good thing. The Bible says, be angry and sin not. Most of us skip to I better not sin. Whoa, can you actually be angry? No, we don't know how to be angry. There's a command there. It's the way it's portrayed. Right. Be angry. Go be angry. But there's a time of processing it. So I think that if we look at it with compassion, then we understand, why am I angry? If we look at it with condemning, you shouldn't feel this way. Christians aren't supposed to feel this way. You're not supposed to feel angry. It's not going to be fruitful. But I think you have to look at it through the lens of compassion, and then realize, what's this stirring up for me? And usually it's one of your hot button areas that I actually think God is, there's areas God could use. God's, there are passions of yours stir up. You have that look on your face like you're going somewhere with it.
No. No.
Do you have a certain direction you're going with it? Or?
No. What I was thinking about too is, when we're interacting with someone and something's triggering and you feel like you can't even be nice to the person because you're so angry.
Oh, you're saying angry at them.
Yeah.
Well, it depends what the relationship is, what the thing is. But
I don't know why I just thought of that.
It's a wound. It's usually a wound,
Yeah.
It's triggering a wound in your own life, in your own journey. And we all have those. We have those moments. And I think we have to let compassion of God show us, what's this about?
Right.
This is about, I never feel listened to. Or this is about, this person's manifesting. I feel in my pastoring, when I look at it through this lens, I could see the issue in front of me represented something in my childhood that was very disturbing or just unhealthy or dysfunctional. Sometimes not being heard, feeling judged, condemnation,
Right. No, I was thinking about it too. And as you're talking, like, okay, well, where do I do this? Where do I get like super angry? If I'm interacting with someone, or I'm interacting where we've even had, times of ministering to people, and where I would just like carry it and take it with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are times where you can get angry at where they're making poor decisions, and
that is really hard.
And you're wanting to love them, but you're angry. That's showing that you're tied in to their outcome, and that's where you have to recognize I've got a tie here that I need to be aware of, that I'm loving, but the love is turning into a burden-bearing thing. Mm-hmm. I'm so thankful Jesus mentioned, "Come to me, all you who are heavy and weary laden." Am I saying that right? And I will give you rest.
Heavy laden and weary. Is it?
Yeah.
Why is my brain?
Do you ever say a word and it sounds weird? That's what I just got into. I'm like, that word doesn't doesn't make
Doesn't
sense.
make sense, right?
And I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for my yoke is easy, my burden is light. So there's a meaning in here that is saying when you're weary and you're emotionally tapped out, you're carrying burdens you don't need to carry. And I say a lot of this too because a lot of our community is obsessive compulsive. And so they take on thoughts and things they shouldn't even take on. It's the nature of OCD. You start spiraling. I use the example of the last video I did. I have constant questions come in. It starts with a premise of, I don't know if I'm going through a hard time, my mood is low, and then the next thing you know, it's like, there's suffering people in Africa I'm not doing anything about. Like, they're just spiraling into all these topics and areas. It's burdens they're not to carry. So it's okay if you read a news headline, there's a crash that's happened, and you say, wow, that's sad, but you don't go into this deep, long, emotional trail on that. I don't see that being taught a lot in Christianity. Like, we really need to talk about this, that like, just God designed our bodies to know what's going on here and maybe every now and then in the neighborhood. Now I know what's happening in every part of the country, everywhere.
Countries.
Or I can.
We're not meant to know it. I'm sorry.
Right.
We're not. You had to really remind me of this because a lot of it goes back to just tribal connection and tribal living. And you are meant emotionally to just process out with those who are in a covenant relationship around you. And actually, it's the healthiest. So let's say your neighbor goes through something traumatic. You're there, you love, you exchange with them, you walk with them, and you're with them in their healing journey too, because you're affected by it, right? You're loving them. So it's really the healthiest process of you working through it, grieving with them, coming out of it, going through, you're walking through it. When you're just watching somebody online, you have no idea about their life. You're not invested just by reading and going, oh my gosh, this is awful. Now it's stuck on you. How are you processing that out?
Yeah.
Now you're carrying it.
And sometimes people can get...
Right, do you know what I mean by that? Yeah.
Well, sometimes people can avoid the work around them because it's too hard. Because it's easier to see somebody online and you feel this thing and it becomes a distraction, like you were talking about at the top of this discussion, where there's that part too, where it's like, it's easier to say, oh, this, and then kind of, get lost in that. And I think the call of Jesus to change burdens is to get back to the simplicity, because he's saying my yoke is easy and light. So if there isn't a lightness to your day, he's not saying that life is easy. He's saying what I'm giving you. So when people say, well, this is why I feel God is put in my life, or what he's leading me into. And you look at it and you go, well, there's a lot of pressure. It doesn't mean there isn't war and difficulty that you're trying to work through. The warfare of struggle. Mental health stuff is a struggle. But Jesus is calling us to go let go of those. And that's a process to say, I've got to give this to you. And you can also be very effective in loving people and empathizing without it being a burden. And this is where, because of our brokenness and all this stuff, we don't know how to gauge that.
No.
And I like every day, it's a journey of, God, Max and Abby are yours. I give them to you. You are the perfect father. And I release myself of that pressure to have to be perfect. I'm learning as I'm parenting. I say that with people that I'm working with. I love so many of the people I've been able to sit down and help and work through areas of their life. Father, they're yours. I'm a brother. And I said this before. I constantly say, hey, Mark Daisy is your brother from another mother. It's a thing I say for you to let you know I'm your brother. Let's get rid of this, like, I'm this expert and you're this. Nah, we're brothers and sisters. Let's just, that gets into a bunch of nonsense. And I'm your brother. But it's a reminder to me, when you're a brother doesn't do everything for the other person. A brother's there, supporting, encouraging, right? But at the end of the day, people are wondering, how do I do this? How do I get rid of false burdens? Well, the Bible actually talks about it, because when Paul taught in Galatians about bearing one another's burdens, we teach that and we stop. Paul then completes a thought, and he says, because each of one of us is to bear our own load. So he brings it back that this is not codependency. This is not guilt-ridden following people around. This is not tying in and owning people's outcome. That was important for me in helping people, was I was tied into the outcome. I need a breakthrough here because I want to feel validated I'm doing a good job. And it's my brokenness talking. And when I let go of that, it actually made what I did more effective. Weird, but true.
Right. It is very, very hard to pour into someone and then you watch their life fall apart.
Right. It's grieving. It's a grieving process.
Right.
Where you grieve that. That's not something you can just fix. It's painful. It's something that you can walk in a better path as you're grieving, because part of grieving is letting go, right? Acceptance and letting go. You know, the stages of grief,
right.
Like acceptance, bargaining, or not, I'm sorry, bargaining, depression.
Somebody, who was it? Oh, I remember who it was now. I forget what I was going through, but somebody gave me the list. Like, here, this is what you need to go through. And it was all the stages of grief.
Accurate, but poor timing.
Right.
It was like shoved in your
right.
face.
It was like, here's the list. This is what you need to go through. I was like, oh, okay.
So we've taken a bunch of different paths.
Yeah, we have today.
My thought today, and I feel like we navigated some of what I was thinking this morning, because we had a couple of areas we could have gone through. And I was like, this emotional thing that we're all carrying, and we're coming through a global shutdown that happened and all this stuff that's coming out of it. There's so many things going on in the world and in our nation and your nations. And I think as believers, it's important that we recalibrate. We allow ourselves to heal a bit, but we recalibrate. How do we simplify things? And I'm learning that. We're learning that. Simplifying relationship. Let's look at the burden. Let's look at the yoke we're carrying. What's in that? What's in that? And does that all really need to be there? And the things that do need to be there, are they burdensome where you're a parent, but you're carrying the weight of your kids so much that it's time to go, God, I'm 100% engaged. I'm in it, but I release this burden, this emotional burden that puts pressure on me in each moment, the stress and fear. I've got to practice giving that to you or people you're helping or work or finances. It doesn't mean just like sitting back, like, oh, I'm not doing anything. It's more of an emotional practice of actually practicing giving. God, I give this to you. And then we take it back. And God, I give it to you. Then we take it back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think you can recognize too, well, I've had to, where it is almost abusing my body to be that tied up in fear and burden bearing. And what about this? Oh my gosh, what about this? What about that? What about Max? What are we going to do with this and that? To the point where goes into how we even began the conversation of now I'm not sleeping. Now I'm tossing and turning. Now my neck now I have a pinched nerve in my neck. Now and then I go, well, I got to take care of the pinched nerve. Meanwhile, I'm still up at 3 a.m. spinning. So It all goes back to, what I'm carrying.
Right. So we pray this is a blessing to your life and to your journey. Do you have any other thoughts that you?
No.
I think this is.
I know. We talked about a lot today. So for those of you that loved it and hung in there with us, thank you.
Yeah, we these episodes are for the ones that are, in the tribe that are hungry and like the conversation. Yeah. And I think that this kind of helped me to put some language to stuff that we're working through and what it looks like to navigate difficult times and recalibrate but get back to the fundamentals for our mental health. So I pray that's a blessing to you all. If it is, go to markdejesus.com, click on the donate button to support in that way. But there's so many free materials. Go to our topics page. There's mental health topics. There's all kinds of areas you can look at for your healing, for your freedom journey. And I pray that maybe today somebody's going to let go of a burden that you're carrying stuff from your family. A lot of people write to me and they're carrying stuff from their family. They don't need to be carrying. You've got loved ones and relatives that you need to let them go and work through that. There's relationships and just stuff that you're carrying. I pray that as we shared, you'd feel some burdens being lifted, that it's time to take on the yoke that Jesus said. It's light. It's light. It's easy. He's walking with you, and give yourself a chance to learn that. So we pray this will be a blessing to the next few days in your life and in your journey. So look forward to next time, Lord willing.
And the creek don't rise.
This is your brother from another mother and sister from another mister saying,
Thanks, y'all.
We're out.